Good morning, Mary. Good morning, everybody. Kelly Hoey, author of the book Build Your Dream Network, here with another virtual water cooler. And for those who don't know Mary, amazing entrepreneur, strategist, began with a degree in the arts. And so we've got a deep, we're going to say rich background there. And we're going to talk grit, resilience, research. All right, Mary, what inspired these books and this topic?
Hello, everyone. My favorite 3 reads over lockdown. And it's gone on a lot longer than we expected, as we all know. And the other thing, last year, before the crazy hit, I made a very conscious decision that I was going to read a lot more women, and I was going to press books written by women into other women's hands. And if anyone I knew was writing a book or involved in any creative endeavor, I was going to support them to get more women published and writing and doing creative things and all the rest of it. And sometimes when you put things out to the universe, mad things happen. And last year and this year has been an absolute bumper year for Irish women writers. And I really wanted to share these 3 books with you.
So, I gotta pause you there, and I'm so glad you're doing this. And you said these women writers, and yes, on COVID, we could have a lot. We're going to have to come back and do this conversation again, because my guess is not the 3 best reads. We could keep going, but part of the reason for doing virtual water cooler and having it focused on books and all the rest of it was a list I saw and a story that for the incoming new president of the United States, they asked 22 writers for book suggestions, like what should Joe read? And there was equal division of men and women, so 11 and 11. And they came up with 22 books. Only 3 were written by women.
Yeah.
And we talk about, put on our other hats of being so interested in promoting female entrepreneurship. And I know you throughout your entire career, but now as one of the founders of AwakenHub, if we as women aren't reading each other's books and, mentioning them to other people, if we're not, buying and using each other's products, how do we expect the other half of the population to do that? So anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Off that soapbox, let's get to the books.
All right, then, let's go. I'm going to show you the first one. Put it up here.
Woohoo! A Ghost in the Throat. Oh, do tell.
So this book is by a wonderful poet and also author called Darren Grifa. Darren is known more for her poetry. And this is basically poetry when you read it. It's so obvious. She talks about this woman in history who has survived because of her own poetry, or a poem she wrote to her husband, who was unfortunately killed. And this poem lasted all the way down through the years. And this poem, I suppose, got in the marrow of Darren, and it has inspired her whole life. And it took her on a journey where she went to find that woman, to try and find that woman in history. And I guess we can all agree, we can figure out what happened.
Yeah. Here, look, I love this. There we go. Look at recent bought this book and it's next on. Yay. Yes.
You love it, Kate. Anyway, I'm not going to spoil it on Kate, but this poem, I suppose, is interwoven into the author's life and what she's doing in her life, like right now, and the different trials and tribulations. But also for me, what really inspired me was a level of scholarship and rigor and research that this woman put into this work, interspersed with a very busy life and teeny tiny children, and just did not give up on it. And at many times, I'm sure she could have said, this is crazy, I'm just not going to do this anymore. So the journey of that ancient Irish poem with a modern woman's life, really encouraging and incredibly inspiring and beautifully written. So anyone who has it on their shelf, pick it up. It's great.
Well, it also sounds like it's, well, you know, as our theme today, sort of grit, resilience, the research, the persistence. Excuse me. Sometimes we go and look for those things. We're thinking we need to buy, you know, a business book on grit or whatever else. But so much of this can be found in literature and memoirs and other stories, and in finding our inspiration or finding, you know, our mental fortitude that way versus, you know, hey, I'm a nonfiction writer. I'm all for nonfiction, but sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you can find your inspiration anywhere. And if you're like me and you love culture and the arts, and that's a very big part of me, don't deny that part of yourself. Go and find the places that you get inspiration from and read the words of people that might be a little bit outside your comfort zone or whatever else, because I think you can find all sorts of encouragement there. Because I'm sure the process of writing a book, I haven't done it yet, Kelly, maybe one day.
Yes,
I'm sure it's exactly the same as building a business. Lots of work, lots of routines.
Yeah, you have to want to do it. I'm also just thinking, I was listening to the BBC News this morning, and in one of the 4 versions of Edward Munch's The Scream, which I think is a painting we can all relate to at this time. In one of them, they've determined that a scribble in the corner is his writing. And as they said, it really was like a note to himself. And he wrote, you know, only a madman could paint this. And so admitting that, you know, that vulnerability, that struggle that he had, acknowledgement of his, you know, I want to say, challenges with mental health, which were known. I think reading these things, when you read these things or you discover these stories or you understand these things, it just kind of encourages you versus someone perhaps writing something that's like, here's how you do it. And then you feel like a failure for not having done it that way.
I know, I think so. And the thing is, we all haven't figured it out. And most things are a process.
Yeah.
You know, like life is a process, writing a book is a process, running a business is a process. And I love hacks, don't get me wrong. But sometimes I really need to be reminded that this is a process and you need to enjoy the process as much as the destination, you know, because we can't always control that. And there's some sort of, the next book I have actually, which makes sense, and I'm going to hang up.
Hold on a second. So I just see Neil Wainwright, our good friend Neil Wainwright, founder of Up Habit. He was like, the first book, Neil, was A Ghost in the Throat. Thank you, Rose Horowitz, another good friend, for getting all that in here. So, all right, what do we got next?
So the next one is Handiwork, and it's by another Irish writer and an artist. She's both, called Sarah Baum. We'll put them in the comments after. And again, she talks very much about that process and how her domestic situation informs her process and her work and how she makes these different things. And that really spoke to me right now, because we are all living in our apartments, in our flats, in our houses, in our bedrooms, and we have different processes going on now in our houses that never thought we would live this way. So we have our desk in one part of the room and we send our emails there, and maybe we write our notes at the kitchen table, or and I thought there was a real vulnerability about that, about sharing how her domestic and how her artistic and her writing self comes together under a roof in a place in West Cork. And I thought a lot of us could really understand that and have a real connection to that. This is my whole world now. But in that whole world, there's beauty. There's huge beauty.
Yeah, handiwork. Oh, I'm so going to read this. I love. Now, the author, is it some of it about her writing process, or is it just? Oh.
Yes, it's both about her writing practice and also her artistic practice.
Oh, amazing.
And I suppose it's about noticing and being present and looking out her window and, you know, bringing all those different aspects together. It's really beautiful.
Because I also too often recommend books, like by writers on their writing process, because I also think of it as for anyone with their career or business, you know, what would you do and how do you set yourself up to do that? And how do you deal with the uncertainty or the naysayers, including the big naysayer in your own head that can prevent you from doing things? How do you structure your day, your environment so that you know, produce your best work? Regardless of being a writer, I often say to people like, okay, when are you most creative? Then, you know, guard that time, don't give it away. So,
that was actually the perfect book for that exact idea. I mean, how this woman, I suppose, guards her day, or, you know, sets up her day. So different parts of her working life she attends to. And, you know, that notion of self-doubt, yeah, very evident too. Everybody has that little gremlin in their ear that jumps up and down and says you're just not good enough. So, you know.
or big gremlin, is depending on the day.
Multiple.
It could be a massive, huge gremlin. And I love these. I love the books like Handiwork, and I'm writing my list here. We'll also make sure to everyone we get links, and we link to all of these things. Because again, I go back to, you know, everyone wants the hack. Everyone wants to know what are the 10 things of successful people. And, you know, a lot of it is figuring out what works for them. And no one wants that as an answer. We want a checklist. And then if we try and follow things as a checklist, you know, other than maybe a checklist of how you get a washboard stomach, we pretty much all know how you do that. And none of us really want to do the work of doing sit-ups every day. But everything else, you've got to figure out your comfort zone, your process, you know, like kind of like cooking, a little of here, a little spice from there, a little, you know, what mixes and makes for you. And that's why I love learning from authors on this. So amazing. All right. So Handiwork was book number 2.
Okay. Last one. Are you ready? Okay.
Yeah.
This is beautiful too.
Constellations.
Yeah.
Oh.
This has to be one of the most beautiful books I have ever read, by a woman called Sinead Gleeson. And in this as well, Sinead marries life and art and her writing and her life together. And she takes a lot of inspiration from a lot of artists, a lot of women artists actually. And she kind of weaves her memoir, her life story through this book. And a lot of it is to do with illness, and many of us have had illness in our lives in this last while, or we've had family members who haven't been well, and a lot of the very difficult things in life has happened to many of us over this last year in particular. So I thought that Constellation really talks to that level of how do you overcome adversity in your health, and how do you continue and live a good life, and, you know, reach your goals and do all the things that you want to do. And I think it's very much a meditation on different parts of her life, and I suppose her journey through illness, and also her journey after, or her journey along the way, I guess. It's really, really beautiful, and she draws it all together, and it's a meditation on nature as well, which is really beautiful too.
Amazing. I'm just like, how much? Yeah, I'm going to be time blocking reading. Like, yeah, you know what? I think in a book with health and that woven through it is so important, because I think for those of us who have the good fortune, and I say it that way, there's times, you know, sheer luck, right? Sperm and an egg got together, and I landed in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and, you know, with all my limbs and all my abilities. And you don't realize how damn lucky you are on that until you have to navigate the world differently, or you're put in a situation like the last year where at any second, a handshake, a sneeze, someone refusing to wear a mask can take that all away from you. Absolutely.
And I think as well as that, we are living the type of life that many, many people live all the time. And when we think about universal design, and we think about good processes and practices around inclusivity, and, including all voices, all of a sudden there's a lot of aha moments happening for many people at the moment, going, gosh, I never thought that, or I never expected that. And what if you could only go 5 kilometers because there wasn't a ramp to get on your local bus or a train or something like that? Or, I mean, there are so many impediments to people living their best lives, and there's no reason why that should be. It shouldn't take a pandemic for the majority of us to understand that, you know, maybe we can make life better for all of us, not just some of us.
Right.
But Constellations is actually, it's beautiful. I think you love it.
Oh, I'm going to love all of these. I mean, I like having a human algorithm, suggest books to me. But hey, all of these books in terms of our theme and talking about, okay, resilience, grit, research. Now, touch on that in terms of, because I'm thinking too, people who know the two of us know that we do a lot of things. And as I started off this, of work, mentorship, support, advocacy for women and women leaders, women in entrepreneurship. Talk about those. And we sort of had the grit, resilience. Talk about the research part on this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, research is incredibly important, and there's an awful lot to do about doing your homework, being prepared, understanding where people are coming from, not taking things for granted, not just, I don't know, lifting the latest 2 articles by whatever the new guru is, doing your own research, making your own conclusions, expanding your environment, expanding where you read from, and going deeper into things. And for me, I think that training really early on in art college about you can't present an idea unless it's incredibly well researched was such an important life skill. And also realizing
folks who don't know your art degree and what you were doing before you got into tech entrepreneurship.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, that fine art degree was incredibly useful. And then not just that, do your research and then communicate the idea to everybody in the room. And then take the feedback with grace, if you can. And present it back and make it better, because it has to be universal. It has to land with people beyond you. So that's why for me, research and rigor is important, because it tells me, first of all, that you care. Secondly, that you've done your research before you meet me or talk to me. Not that I'm important, but just so that you understand and I understand we have the same respect for each other. And sometimes I think, particularly when it comes to new products and services, so many things haven't talked about the unintended consequences, or the fact that we'll say you can't hear, well then you can't get on the platform and there's no captions. Sorry, that's not good enough. It's 2021 and I have no out, gone.
Right. Yeah, the move fast and break things is not the approach we need. We need something much more deliberate and meaningful. I think in terms of all this. I love your part about, you know, taking feedback and where and how that can lead. I mean, you can ask for someone, you know, we've both been at speed mentoring events. You know, you can go to these orchestrated kind of conversations, but what you do after that, you know, how you stay in touch with someone, how you let them know what you did with the information, that's what takes a one and done transaction. It opens the door to something further. And I'm thinking, as we shared before we jumped on the live broadcast over the weekend, I stopped by our Go See Books in New York City. For those who love bookstores, you know, it is antique, rare maps, books, you know, just, oh my God, it's like, it's delicious. It's just, you know, it smells like an old bookstore or a great library. It's fantastic. But they also have a full basement of, you know, contemporary books, as well as outside, out front, you know, bookshelf and a book table. And these are used books, and they're, you know, $3 or, you know, depending on the price. So the ones outside are like $3. And I managed to grab it was a advanced reader's proof of Elizabeth Strout's, the best-selling author, Elizabeth Strout's novel, Amy and Isabel, that was like published, according to this tentative publication date of January 1st, 1999. But it was lovely to pick up this copy because there was this letter, back in the day when, advanced reader copies were these, they were advanced reader copy. It wasn't advanced reader PDF. It was this copy. There was this lovely letter from the editor, and he tells the story, this editor at Penguin Random House, how he used to receive really well-written story submissions when he was over at the New Yorker. And he knew that the stories weren't right for him, but he knew that this writer had talent and had a voice. And so he encouraged her to write. And he encouraged her to expand on some of these things that he thought were like episodic, or they needed to be more than, the word count that the New Yorker had. And lo and behold, when there was a transcript for this book, it landed on his desk over at Penguin Random House. And I thought, yeah, that's how you build a network. That's how you get, you take feedback and you apply it. I mean, she could have, as many of us do, we get feedback we don't like. I'm sorry, you're rejected, which in essence she was. Your story is rejected to the New Yorker. She could have just said, well, I'm taking my toys and going home and I'm not going to talk to you again. Instead, she kept going back and creating her voice and getting feedback, and look what happened.
Yeah, and there's a thing as well that comes to my mind a lot when I hear these types of stories. There's a conversation at the moment about, get rid of all the toxic people in your life. And I get that. I understand it. And then there's another conversation around, remove all the negative people in your life. And sometimes I wonder, how do you balance that? Because sometimes the person that gives you some feedback, and it may be negative, it may be that you need to work in that chapter, it may be that, look, it has potential, but, or whatever it is. To your point, Kelly, if she had removed that person's voice, she would never have got a book deal in the end and gone on to have written how many at this point? 10, 15 books now, all like award-winning, amazing.
Right, and I want to say, to be better at her craft, what a gift. I mean, when someone says, no, this isn't right for us, and here's some suggestions, you could just say thanks very much and go away, or you could keep going back, because clearly someone taking the time to give you that feedback. I mean, maybe that's part of this other kind of persistence and grit, thinking about entrepreneurship, of when you get the rejection, maybe going back and saying, okay, if they don't give you an explanation, saying, okay, is there any feedback you can give me on why this didn't work for you? You don't have to bug someone incessantly saying, give me feedback, but at least, you could try and get that, and then you could, cultivate it. I mean, this is showing your character as opposed to not just your product.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's the thing that I liked about all three of these books, that they really show the backbone, like that old word of backbone and grit and determination, and sometimes against all odds, and sometimes because it doesn't even make sense, because why would you sit there and make that amount of these things that you're going to eventually one day put in a gallery somewhere? I mean, why would anybody in their right mind do that? Well, why not? And I think that's a really important thing, that, okay, maybe that person can't give you feedback on that day, but maybe you could ask 3 others. I had a conversation with such a person and they said, I'm not ready, or it is not ready. Yeah. Can you see the same thing? What do you think? Can you give me a guide or a bit of a steer? Because don't really understand that.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this like creating is a discovery process. Why rush that? Why rush that? I see this question from Rose. No, you can't buy advanced copy sales, Rose, but sometimes you can get your hands on them. So Argosy has got used books. So, they take what people donate, and somebody got an advanced copy and they ditched it. I guess they were doing a little COVID housekeeping, clean out all the stuff, and I got my hand on that advanced copy, and it's a gem, because, I mean, the book is a gem, but this note from the editor at the front, which adds this extra dimension to reading the story that the author is, it's a fiction. The other place where you can sometimes get advanced reader editions opposed to it like an advanced copy, like an uncorrected proof, where you can get advanced reader copies is sometimes the book giveaways on Goodreads. Mm-hmm. So if you're a Goodreads member and you haven't participated in their giveaways, go do that. I have had more good books land on my doorstep. So if you go on Goodreads, across the top navigation, you'll see Browse. Drop down that menu, and I think it's about 3 down, you'll see giveaways. Just jump on over to that. I got the book 1,000 Ships. That was one of my gem reads of the last year, and that was a Goodreads giveaway. So there we go. This is like, this is like a good hard candy that I'm mulling in my mouth right now, Mary. Like all of these kinds of stuff. So these are your big 3 from the last year. Let's go through them again, and then I want to know what you're reading right now. So we've got The Ghost in the Throat, Handiwork, and Constellations. And what are you reading now?
I have the biggest stack on my shelf at the moment, and I'm actually reading a ton of strategy books and work things, and I've gone back into old programs that I've created. I'm going back and reading all over those, and Business Model U and Business Model Canvas and all that stuff. So nothing exciting at the moment.
But you know what? Can we come back and can you talk about some of those? Because there's an endless, like reflecting on some of these books a second time is always, and with more seasoned eyes or new experiences, I would love to do this again and have you say, all right, because I'm going to admit it, as a nonfiction writer, sometimes slogging through business, strategy, those kind of books, it can be a slog.
Yeah, and the thing is, now that I have, built a few things and helped other people build a few things, and worked with young people building some things, it's actually interesting to go back and read the books that informed how I started out. And I suppose, how do you help people figure out the best places to go now?
Right.
So for me, that's really interesting. So a bit of a deep dive into strategy and business models and stuff like that at the minute. I'll do it happily anytime.
Like I said, this is like getting a person, not an algorithm, to recommend a book, and knowing that, even though, hey, we're supposed to have been saving time on commutes and all sorts of stuff in our work from home era, she says, with these my air quotes are more like air punches or flipping the bird. We're working longer and harder than ever before. Average workday in this country is extended like 2-3 hours because you don't have to commute. So let's jump on a team Zoom call at an hour when you wouldn't otherwise be holding those meetings. So to save people some time and sort of recommendations on why they may want to read something or which portions of it they may want to read would be hugely valuable.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, we all are working longer. There's no doubt about it.
It's nutty, absolutely nutty. This has been a delight, my friend, as always. Thank you for these book recommendations. We will make sure, everyone, that we put them in the comments, and we'll get them on Twitter. I'll get them over out there on YouTube, and Mary, as always.
Let us know what you thought of them as well. Give us some feedback. Let me know what pieces of these books inspired you, or I don't know, what lines got you through a hard day or a rough meeting or homeschool or whatever.
Oh yeah, love it. And of course, now I'm going to run off to, bookshop.org and order some more books because,
can never have a pile too big.
Because, that's what I do. All right. I'll justify justify spending money on books because, there's no Netflix subscription. So there we go. I can keep spending money on books. Mary, So awesome there, everyone. Mary Carty on Twitter. You can also find her with AwakenHub, fabulous events and things supporting women entrepreneurs. Anything else we should know that coming up before we sign off?
We have an event on the 23rd of March with Next Gen founders, 3 founders who took their passion to international businesses, and they're all under 20. Yeah, amazing.
You know,
so, that world.
Say success at any age. It's all possible. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thanks.
See you all.
Stay healthy. Stay well.
Bye.
Bye.